Welcome to the Make a Baby podcast. I'm Carolina Sotomayor, your podcast host and expert Reiki womb healer. Over the past 6 years, I've had the honor of helping over 75 babies come into the world through the power of Reiki. I believe that healing is not meant to be done alone, nor should it be. On this podcast, you'll hear amazing Reiki guided meditations, empowering healing tips, and taboo topics with a focus on inclusivity and representation. Are you ready for these conversations? I am. Let's get started. Hi, friends. Welcome back. This week, we're talking about, are you supported enough in your pregnancy? And we have a very special guest. But before we dive in, I want to give a shout out to one of our featured listeners of the week, My Coaching Biz, who left us a great review, a 5-star review. She says, huge fan of this podcast, absolutely loving listening to all Carolina's episodes. They're insightful, helpful, and super enjoyable. Well, My Coaching Biz, thank you so much. And I see that this review is from New Zealand. So shout out to listening to us from New Zealand. Thank you again. We're so glad and grateful to have reached you across the globe. So, and remember, you that's listening, please leave us a 5-star review when you get a chance. And maybe next week you'll be featured as our listener of the week. And I'll give you a shout out here on the show. So personally, I love talking about all phases of motherhood, but particularly pregnancy. Pregnancy was, I dare say, sacred time for me, even though it was a tumultuous experience. I've only have my own experience to speak about. I do help a lot of moms through the pregnancy with Reiki, but I am super excited about the stories that are coming through this episode. And most importantly, I'm excited to bring you one of my favorite people. Her name is Anne. She is a pregnancy empowerment coach. Anne, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm so good. And I'm so excited to be doing this with you. Just being and bearing witness to what you're putting out in the world. You're infectious. And I have just been jumping at the bit to be on an episode. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. I met you over a year ago and I just as soon as I saw you, you were nearly postpartum
Yes,
when we met.
very.
Like very like it was like
Yeah.
with like less it was like weeks,
Yes,
right?
like
Like
baby
6
on the
to 8.
boob, newly
Yeah,
postpartum.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
It was like, that's my girl. Because you're into here like spirituality,
Yeah,
breastfeeding.
check.
What do you want to talk? Your postpartum? I'm your girl. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And you're an entrepreneur. Are we besties? So,
Immediate besties.
so today I want to highlight that Anne is an empowered pregnancy coach and she is available for you to hire. I want that to be first and foremost. She's incredible. I have done so much work with you. And I'm just so honored to have you here. And I know that the things that we're going to talk about today are going to be life changing. So let's dive in. So, with our title, are you supported enough in your pregnancy? So let's start there. Do you feel like women are supported enough in pregnancy and birth?
Absolutely not.
Uh,
I
so
strongly answer that.
no, like
It's just
literally,
not enough support.
so why do you say that? So tell me, what's the stance? Like, tell me what's the juice behind that?
Yeah, I feel in general in our pregnancy culture, even motherhood culture, we commonly are passive participants in our pregnancy, whether that's within our care team, whether that's how we are viewed in pregnancy and in working. I've been a coach in postpartum and for almost 6 years now, and I was starting to see really common themes of the impact that our pregnancy has in postpartum and the lack of support and how that kind of continues into our journey into motherhood. So it is, very run of the mill. We're not taught how to take control of our pregnancies and prepare for birth and trust and know that we can have a positive birth experience. It's testing, it's routine, it's statistics. There's a general underlying fear-based energy that exists in pregnancy, and pregnancy requires a lot of support. And unfortunately, at a baseline, we don't have it. We're not really set up for success.
And you mean that particularly because we have listeners all over the world,
Yeah.
you mean that particularly in the United States?
Yes. Yes. I think, I mean, general in other countries, even if we think about what maternity leave and, care looks like, the United States is low on that list.
Most definitely. So how do we start to shift this? So if I know the tendency, because I had a really great um, military birth
Oh,
worker on the podcast. Her name was Kayla Cole, and she told me, she goes, you're a birth worker, you know that, right? And I was like, well, I guess I am because I do a lot of birth prep as well. A lot of the lines that you and our lines are very similar,
right.
especially I'm certified in Reiki for childbirth. So, but I'm not a doula. And the doula is that word is being phased out and birth workers becoming more
Yeah.
mainstream. Do you feel that, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. Hot
You were saying,
potatoes.
how do we shift that?
Okay, yeah. So a lot of the clients that I work with that are wanting a positive birth experience, it's usually two types of mindsets. One is they're already very naturally minded and holistic about their life in general,
Hmm.
about their lifestyle, about their medicine, about
Yeah.
their wellness. So they're taking that approach because that is something that is across the board in their life. So it's a theme. And if they're going for a natural childbirth, they tend to be of that mindset of very, very much holistic and natural minded. And then the second part is the mom had a previous birth experience. It was negative, and now they're wanting a second. They want like a do-over,
Yeah.
or I want a different experience. I don't see a lot of first time moms coming in that are just say that are not of natural life
Right.
mindset and approaching like um and this is just the patterns I'm seeing. I'm trying not to generalize, but
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a lot of first time moms come through by working or even speaking to them that are empowered or know what kind of questions to say. It's the women that have either who are natural minded or have had a bad birth experience that want an empowered birth
Yes.
experience. I find most women who are first time moms don't know enough about birth in general
Yeah.
or pregnancy experience to know what is good or bad even,
Hmm.
or what is normal or not normal, or what questions to ask. Do you find that too?
You couldn't have hit that nail more on the head. Those two buckets are so strong. Unfortunately, and
Okay.
that was me. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I,
thought
I fell
so.
into I fall into both of those two buckets, but
Right, I know.
oftentimes, oftentimes the I want to
We've
do
had long
things
conversations.
differently the second time around usually comes after a poor experience or even birth trauma to then be like, okay,
Right.
now I want to shift things. Unfortunately, with the first time pregnant mamas, which I feel like is a big part of why I stepped into this role, is we don't know what we don't know, right? We kind of head into this
Oh my gosh,
pregnancy.
is that
Go ahead.
that should be on a
Yeah, we
shirt.
just
That should be on
don't.
a
And it's
shirt.
not to any fault
100%.
of our own. So we're excited that we're carrying, right, new life and we're trusting in the system, right? Like we're kind of entering into a system. And that is where the ultimate shift starts, is the education and the awareness around you have decisions that are within your control, right? Like throughout the pregnancy journey, you can truly educate yourself and take control to your provider is not just somebody who's down the street from your house because this office is in close proximity. Sometimes that happens, but who is the right provider for me? What do I want for my birth experience and my pregnancy experience? And oftentimes there's so many decisions that we're making throughout pregnancy that we just don't even know that we have choices. So I too kind of like to think about it as it's not really about making the right decision or the wrong decision. It's in pregnancy. It's about being provided with the proper information to make a decision that's self-aligned for you. Motherhood is divided, right? There's some hot topics there. Pregnancy is also very a hot topic. It's divided. So we have to
Oh
really
my gosh.
step into
You could
that.
go to
We could
war
go
over
to
some
war.
things.
We could go to
I had a
war.
woman tell me I didn't really give birth because I had a C-section. And I said, hold up. What are you talking about? She goes, you didn't have a vaginal birth.
Right. So yeah,
You
you
didn't really
just,
give birth.
yeah.
I was like, so how did he get out? Was he a leprechaun and he jumped out? Was it like
Right.
osmosis? Oh, there's so many dividing topics. So my question for you is, how do first, because I feel like there are, so my audience usually has struggled with
Yeah.
infertility. I struggled with their fertility and or if they're wanting to become pregnant, I like to introduce these topics in my lives, in
Yeah.
my membership, in my next level fertility group coaching program. And is we're not just thinking about your fertility. We're
Yeah.
talking about beyond conception. We're going there
Hmm.
because most women who struggle are just looking to get pregnant and then they'll think about
Right.
pregnancy. And I'm like, okay, so now you're
Now
pregnant
what?
and what are we going to do? And even then that's still very jarring for
Right.
them. So where is, so if we were a first time
Hmm.
mom and they're like, okay, I am now pregnant and I want to make the best of the situation. I want to do this well. I want a positive, empowered experience for birth and pregnancy because this pregnancy is sacred and my
Oh,
like
so
movements
sacred.
in your belly and like, I burped all the time and
We are portals. We are portals. Like we create life. It is sacred.
I looked so beautiful when I was pregnant, and I'm a plus size woman. So I've mostly been a plus size woman, and I walked around like I was the sexiest thing that
As you
ever.
should.
And let me tell you, I had the roundest belly. I was like, it was a thing. So like I was like, because I knew based upon the conversations I had with my spouse that this was the one time thing. We were only going to have one child. So when you have that mindset and you're aware that this is
That's
a
it.
one time thing, you treat it very differently,
Yeah.
right? It's very like, I'm going to milk the, I was basically, I'm
Yeah.
milking
Yeah.
this. I'm living this and I'm going to savor this because I'm not going to get another
Hmm.
chance. So I tell women, in most of my clients, we don't know. Like if it's taken one client took 9
Hmm.
years and when she came to me, we got her pregnant within 3 months. But like 9 years and then you finally get pregnant or and the pregnancy sticks, like you do want to
Yeah.
savor it, but it's also terrifying. So, um how does one start to shift into that? How do they find resources? How do they even begin? Like what's the first
And it's
step?
incredibly overwhelming, right? So if we even think about the the women in that space, right? You've been on a journey just to get to the point of the
Right.
journey that will then be the point to the next journey of being motherhood. Oftentimes it takes an emotional toll, right? Like we have been on a journey to get to that point, and our mindset has to be on point, has to be addressed. And I also feel like our pregnancy mental health isn't talked about enough, right? The support that's needed to go alongside that journey. So when I think about a fertility journey, when I think about pregnancy after loss, right, and the impact that that has on pregnancy, the first pillar, if you will, is having a healthy pregnancy mindset, because we don't ever really know what we're going to be facing in pregnancy. I've had the easy glowing pregnancy and I've had the I hate this and my body is experiencing just a laundry list of symptoms and I can't wait to be done being pregnant experience. And you have to be able to have the mindset to combat whatever is going to be thrown your way, because we just don't know. And depending on what our journey looked like to get there, we really have to tune in. And I find that cultivating a spiritual practice, whatever that looks like for you, right? Then that doesn't always mean a religious practice, but it could mean, just purely a spiritual practice, or whatever mindful practices is really a going within journey. Fortunately, pregnancy almost feels like an outer body experience, right? Our bodies are changing. We're like, what the F is
Like an alien.
happening? And it's not always a comfortable time to go within and assess, how am I feeling? What are my thoughts? What are things that are coming up for me? Pregnancy is also a time that will bring up some trauma, right? If there's things that you have gone through that are not healed, are not addressed, it's going to oftentimes come up in pregnancy. So then what, right? Like, okay, we've had the fertility journey, we've had the trauma, we've had this, and now I'm pregnant and I'm supposed to be excited and everybody's telling me I'm excited, but I'm going through some stuff. So pregnancy mindset, I would say, is top first and foremost that we really have to be putting focus towards in order to be able to head towards the rest of that journey. And oftentimes that is going within to ask ourselves, what am I feeling? And it's not easy to feel.
So no, it's not. I'm going to touch upon I know you and I have been in circles where the word mindset is
Yeah.
often used, and I always want to touch upon what
Yeah.
that really
Fair.
means. Mindset is what is determining, is actually a couple of things, is what your focus and priority is when you are thinking, and also beliefs. So like, or what your beliefs are
Yeah.
shifting towards. So if somebody says having a positive mindset, having an empowered mindset, these are things that you are trying to bring into your life or
Yeah.
you're striving to believe. So this means I am worthy of a positive pregnancy experience. I am open to learning what I need to do to prepare for birth, and everything is working out in my favor. It could be I trust my body and I trust
Mm-hmm.
my baby in my womb. Could be these things that you're working towards. Doesn't mean you don't feel fear or that life might not happen, but having a positive mindset is also learning to either respond and or
Mm-hmm.
react within that mindset. So if something does happen, be like, okay, we're going to get through this, or what are all the options before I make a
Right.
decision? So those are also like a mindset of also a positive empowered mindset. I'm going to bring in a
Yeah.
little woo here, is more of is also channeling your divine feminine. And what that means is reckon some telltale signs that you're doing that correctly, or that you are on the right trail, the right, I don't want to say the word correctly or trail, some signs that you are actively
Mm-hmm.
doing that, or that you're more patient than
Yeah.
normal, you're slower to react, you pause before you speak. You also use words like, I'm going to think about it and
Mm-hmm.
let you know. Like you're pausing, and that's
Yeah.
feminine, because when we are activating our feminine and we're feeling empowered, we're also standing in our worth. You may not be doing this consciously, or
Yeah.
you may not be aware that you're actively doing it. So those are some things that are important to recognize, like, yes, I am actually moving towards a positive mindset and positive responses. So mindset is beliefs, reactions, responses, and emotions, and also like how do you handle all of that with it. So it's a little bit more than just
Mm-hmm.
beliefs itself or beliefs you want to have. It's the process in growing into it. And I think that that's an a very honest approach to what mindset is,
Absolutely.
especially in this phase and season of motherhood. Also is your mindset might
Oh my
change
goodness.
too. Like you
Yes.
might start out you I like to say is like, especially if you've never approached like mind
Yeah.
training or mindset at all, start very simple. I just want to be
Mm-hmm.
more informed. And as you become and learn more about your options with pregnancy, or the right questions to ask, think of it as refining. You're just getting
Yeah.
better and better. You might want to say, well, maybe I do want a tub. Maybe I want to
Right.
labor in my tub in the hospital, or maybe I want a midwife
Right.
instead of an
Mm-hmm.
OBGYN. So and understanding like that mindset is like, okay, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to allow myself to lean into that, um is very often not talked about. Like nothing about this conversation that you and I are having, and nothing about your fertility, your pregnancy, or postpartum is a black or
Yep.
white. And nothing's a straight line. So understand that your mindset can
Mm-hmm.
shift. I know that that my mindset now as a postpartum, are we always
Forever
postpartum?
postpartum.
Forever the postpartum man, the 6-year-old. I'm more about like, what can I do to create
Yeah.
more ease in my
Yeah.
life? And so like I'm refining my mindset of like, how can I
Mm-hmm.
essentially de-stress my life so I can
Right.
have ease. So understanding that mindset is all of those
Yes.
things. So now if we have mindset, you mentioned a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual practice. My recommendations or spiritual practice could be meditation. It could be saying
Mm-hmm.
affirmations. You could be
Journaling.
doing
Yeah.
journaling. A lot of people, you can talk to your higher self or
Yeah.
have prayer. And I don't necessarily like this might be a little, this might a little be controversial. I pray to the
Mm-hmm.
universe, to my higher self. I've prayed to the
Yeah.
Reiki babies, I've prayed to and I've asked for guidance. I've prayed to my
Mm-hmm.
womb. Um,
Love that.
so I also have oracle cards. I've also done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of journaling. I've had crystals. I mean, there's not one way
Right.
to center yourself or ground yourself. So I want people to understand like whatever you choose and what makes you feel good as long as it's legal
Yes.
and safe.
Yes.
Um
Yes.
just know that that's
Yeah.
okay. So like I have one client, she likes oracle cards but her
Okay.
husband doesn't. So we just do them
Yeah.
on our sessions. But she's like, I really love that. It gives me so much insight. I have another client that uses a
Mm-hmm.
pendulum, you know. I have another client that burns
Mm-hmm.
incense while she
Yeah.
meditates. I mean, it's just all what is going to allow you to feel
Yes.
more centered. So if they start to have the mindset, what is you mentioned a little bit in that about
Mm-hmm.
questions. So does a person who's pregnant have the right to
Oh my
ask
gosh, yeah.
questions? And to who do they ask
Yes, but we
questions
still have to
to?
unpack some things here because, girl, you were just dropping some gems that we need to backtrack a bit. So, when I think about mindset, right, and I
My
think
God.
about these beautiful things of meditating and journaling and speaking positive words to yourself, for many, there's also this voice in our head that's like, girl, you don't believe that. Right? We start like wanting to shift, right? We start
Oh,
wanting to
ego.
shift these things. Yeah. And there's
It's
ego
ego.
coming through, and there's self love issues that are coming through, and there's, am I worthy of this, that are coming through. So oftentimes, these thoughts, if we can be in tune with those thoughts, is going to guide us to what's really coming up for us. Because I feel like oftentimes when people think of a pregnancy positive mindset, it's mind over matter. Oh, if I just will my way throughout this pregnancy or into birth, then I'm good. And it's allowing fear to
That's not true.
exist, right?
Because I
Alongside this shift, because I work with women so much that are like, I am flooded with my pregnancy fears and I don't know how to shift into that positive mindset. And I'm saying the things, I'm doing the things, and I still feel it. And we have to unpack what are those belief systems. We have to unpack what are these fears that are coming up from you. Because I never feel like I'm fixing you or solving you. I am just here to be a vessel to like help you uncover. All those answers live within sight of us, right? So pregnancy mindset, it's so important that you said, what does that truly mean? Because those spiritual practices, only you know what is going to feel good for you. So I think the questions for me comes down to, what experience do I want? What do I want to feel? Do I want to feel peace in my pregnancy? Do I want to feel like I'm in control? Do I want to feel like I'm creating something positive for me and my baby? What is it? Those answers could run the gamut of, what our answers could be could really vary woman to woman. But sometimes we also don't know what the questions are to even ask ourselves or our provider. But I like to start with, what do you envision? If you allow yourself to really just, what do I want for my pregnancy and birth? We can start there and then kind of backtrack to what the next decisions are. Okay, you really want to have a connection with your provider. Okay, well, that can happen in the OB space. It probably can also happen in the midwifery space. So let's kind of explore what type of prenatal experience that you want. Where do you envision delivering your baby? Is it at home? Is it in a tub? Is it at a hospital? Okay, that's what you envision. Okay, now let's go down that route. So starting with questions is really important because it's not my job to decide what your pregnancy and birth should look like. It comes from within you, and then we make decisions that are self-aligned around that. And oftentimes we don't feel that we know how to make self-aligned decisions because we're pressured and we're persuaded. And again, that fear-based pregnancy culture doesn't always allow us to kind of tune in and ask the questions that we need to ask.
So, so for us to get more support as a pregnant person, we need to know first what
Yes.
we want. But before we even know what we want, we need to know
Yeah,
what our mindset is and then know what is possible. Then we can make decisions and then we can
absolutely.
ask for support. Who should be supporting pregnant
Yeah. Well,
people?
birth workers, let's start there. You know how we always say that it takes a village to raise a child? Where I've always been like, where's the village? Where's all the people that are supposed to be there? I feel like pregnancy takes a village. And more often than not, you have your provider and you have your partner. And that's probably the most of your village for, majority of the pregnancy culture. If you're lucky to
If
even
you're
have a
lucky to
partner
have,
with you, right? So one of the,
yeah,
aside from pregnancy mindset focuses that I have for pregnant mamas is building your care team, right? We have to think about it in that capacity. So that is likely my provider, that is likely
mm,
my partner, that
that's
is
really
could potentially
awesome.
be a doula, that could, there could be a little mix of who is with me on this team. It could be my pregnancy empowerment coach, right? Like what are my needs? What are my needs? Because
I love
our
that.
partners, especially if we're first time parents, they don't know oftentimes what they're doing either. So you kind of have two of us that are,
I
you
can't,
don't know what you don't know. Support is needed.
I would say that have your medical provider, but then you need, I always, if you can find a pregnancy and
Yeah,
birth doula,
different,
because
right?
I know that they're different, um, I would
Yeah,
highly, highly recommend it. And choose one that you're like 100% all
yes.
in with. Like, this is your bestie. She's going to see your vagina.
Yep.
She's
It's
going to
intimate.
like tell your
Yeah,
partner. It's super intimate. Make sure you've talked to people who've used that person. Um, and gotten referrals. Make sure you have a
all the
contract in place. I
things.
mean,
Yeah,
we've done whole doula
yeah.
episodes, all the things. But I feel like having an in-person birth doula or birth worker is so profound and makes the birth experience
Yeah.
go so much better.
Yes.
Statistically, there's so many benefits for
Yes.
it. We won't go into that, but
Yeah.
having in-person support in addition to virtual support
Mm-hmm.
is also really good because I know a lot of birth workers will also
Mm-hmm.
do virtual
Yeah.
support. Um, and there are some, like here in Omaha, there is a nonprofit that will give grants
Amazing.
and pay the doula. So if you're like there is, and there's
Yeah.
fundraising in the community and diaper drives and all kinds of things to make sure like women have access to it that maybe
Absolutely.
might be lower
I don't
income.
know what I would have done without my doula in both births. Like, it was a determining factor of me having a positive birth experience or not. Because I was, again, that second time mom was like, I'm doing things differently this time around. Because had my doula not been there and what I saw and experienced in the hospital, it would have gone very different. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around doulas as well. You can have a doula if you're having a planned C-section. You can have a doula if you're planning a medicated birth. Like they are there to support you in that process and even bring you and your partner together, right? To help kind of whatever you want that experience to look like. But then there's also the side of, well, what if I can't afford a doula, right? I want to build this care team, but I may not be able to get there. And I've also shared with, with moms too in the pregnancy journey, maybe if somebody's buying you a gift or maybe that is your focus. Hey everybody, I really want this thing, so instead of doing X, Y, or Z, if you're contributing to my pregnancy at all, then it says there are ways to pull it together. So I find that I work with both sides. I work with the mamas who are like, hey,
Yes,
I need you
100%.
and to help me build my care team and I want a doula. And then I have the mamas are like, hey, I can't afford a doula, but I really need pregnancy support. And then I can kind of step into that role, not with you of course in your birth, but again, it's asking those questions of what do I want my birth and pregnancy experience to look like? And then kind of building your support system around you. I worked with many mamas who it's their mom, it's their friend, it's their, somebody who stepped into the role of like, how am I going to learn how to support you? And again, going back to the provider, we have to know what we want and then choose a provider that's aligned with our choices. And far too often, the important questions and decisions are coming bottom of the ninth, right before we're about to deliver. And we learn like, oh, wow, our provider's pushing an induction, and wait, why? And well, nobody asked me how I wanted to deliver. And, there's a lot of, again, going back to you don't know what you don't know, but that care team being in alignment with what we want is vital.
So I want to talk about something that's really important to me is asking the right
Yeah.
questions to your provider. I want women to know that are listening, whether it's fertility, pregnancy, or postpartum,
Yep.
you have the right to ask
Yes.
questions to your provider
Yes.
always. And there's
Mhm.
never a dumb question, and you're never a burden. If they give you the reaction that you are, one,
Yep.
you need to correct them. They work for you.
Yes.
And I think that there is this common conception, this
Misconception.
common no, it's a
Mm-hmm.
common belief and understanding that doctors
Yep.
are authority figures. And as women, we're taught to
Mm-hmm.
be yes
Yes.
and people pleasers and, like just follow what I said. And that's the culture that you were talking about of like the pregnancy is like
Yeah.
who's in charge here. And it is not commonly communicated well, it's not communicated in a doctor's
Yeah.
office that you're in charge.
Yes.
That's quite the opposite of the vibe. So, you
Yes.
are in
I always
charge,
say your provider is
and
the
it is your
medical expert, and commonly we think of them as the medical authority, but you are the authority of your baby, or of your body, right? Of your
mhm,
pregnancy. And we really have to shift that mentality. I always say, like, you're the MVP when you step in to that prenatal visit, right? So we kind of have to also command that. And I like to think of prenatal visits like you have homework to do before we step. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the things? What are the questions? There is no dumb questions,
mhm.
right? I don't care if it's my pee looks different this week or my big toe hurts tomorrow. Like, we have to assess is this normal?
Is this
There's so
pain
much of
normal?
that we experience, but I get that a lot where
Yeah.
one, we don't know. They're saying, and I don't even know what to ask in the prenatal visit, or I get 15 minutes with my provider and it feels like it goes by in a second. And then I'm left. I'm like, oh man, I still have questions. Well, guess what? Those questions that are constantly circulating and the crazy that is up here, it's going to affect your pregnancy experience. It's going to affect your mindset. And yes, we need to know that it is a part of our pregnancy and birthing rights that you are in control and you ask the questions. Because on the other side of that answer is, again, not a right or wrong. It's being provided with proper informed consent, the pros, the cons, the benefits, the risks, whatever it is, to get your answer so that you have clarity to then decide, what do I want? What does this look like for me based on my health, based on my pregnancy, based on my baby? We have to start shifting into asking questions. A lot can start and a lot can be solved for, and more clarity can be given by simply asking your questions, but also commanding that time. If you have 15 minutes, and mom, you better maximize that 15 minutes, then we are going to utilize that. Yeah, sure. If you have 45 minutes with a midwife, then great. Then we have more time to dive into things, but we have to ask. Bring your list.
But bring your
I have
list.
a
Bring the
prenatal
list.
visit prep
Bring the
sheet
list.
for mamas. And I'm like, hey, going into that visit, you're going to write down these things. You're going to write down your questions. That way we don't forget. And we have pregnancy brain, right? We get into that visit. We're like,
Oh my
what was
gosh.
my question?
I've
What
got
was my
pregnancy
question? Did I have
brain.
questions? And then after it's like, oh man, I didn't even ask. So we kind of have to treat it as true prep and homework, and birth is the same, but we're busy and we have lives, or we have other children, and we're like, oh, I have an appointment today, right? And we're kind of in that headspace. So we really need to focus, and especially if we have questions, worries, stresses, concerns, fears, that we need to ask for the help and make sure. And again, if we're not getting a positive response, right? If we're met with, you don't have to worry about, or there's some sort of negativity on the other line, I always tell mamas, then that is a sign that your provider may not be right for you. And we don't just have to pick one and stick with it the entire time. If you're consistently not feeling seen and heard and feeling like you are an active participant in your pregnancy, it is not too late to find another provider, at least start that journey of finding somebody who's going to properly support you.
I always recommend clients to
Yes.
interview.
Yes.
Um, interview if you can. Now, a lot of my clients
Hmm.
are high risk,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit different. But if they are coming in and they're not
Yeah.
doing like IVF or IUI, and they are like, you can go, they it's a thing. You call up maybe the midwife or you call up the OBGYN that you're looking and you say, I want to
Hmm.
schedule a meet and greet. You
Yeah.
can also do this for
Absolutely.
pediatricians. And they usually do them like once a month around here. I found that the providers either do them weekly at the same time during this window,
Hmm.
and they're very short. But you can go in and at least get the vibe and
Yeah.
ask the questions then. And the meet and greets are not
Hmm.
billed through your insurance, they're free. And you have a right
Yeah.
to get to know the provider. You can also do this even if you're not pregnant. If you're looking to get pregnant and you're like, I want to stick, do this with an OB. Like if you're not happy,
Hmm.
you can be proactive in this way. And that way you're like, yeah, I like this doctor. And if that doesn't work
Hmm.
out, I have a plan B. Um, I always people are like, "Are you
Yeah.
serious?" I was like, "Oh yeah." I interviewed like 4 or 5 pediatricians and I think I
Hmm.
interviewed 3 midwives
Absolutely. I
offices.
did the same.
And I
Yep.
switched halfway through my pregnancy. I switched around in
Hmm.
15,
I did the
16
same
weeks
in my
pregnant.
second. I switched.
I switched.
Yeah.
That was not quite halfway,
Yeah.
but yeah, I switched. Um so this is a very common question. So I feel like um Rizzo cut out all my ums. If a person does not
Hmm.
have a supportive partner, but they do have a
Hmm.
supportive doctor or a medical team, what is a way? Because this episode is all
Yeah.
about, are you supported enough in your pregnancy? So there are going to be a lot of women who are not supported, or I want to particularly talk about the women who are having spouses that are just there, but maybe not in tune with them, or maybe
Yeah.
not emotionally available, or maybe, whatever the reason is, but they're not
Hmm.
exactly supported. How does one approach this? Because that's more of a
Yes.
deeper issue. That's a
Yes.
relationship issue. That's out the scope of our
Right.
my practice and
Yeah.
yours. But how does one navigate that? Or what are some
Hmm.
tips that that woman or that pregnant person can, you know, I think when you have a situation like that, it's more
Yeah.
about mitigation. If because that's more like if you're gonna stay in
Right.
the relationship, oh,
Right.
so that's
Right.
another story. That's
Yes,
like
girl, I
this.
know.
So we're not gonna talk about that. But like that's another
Yes.
that's another situation. But if you're actively pregnant, you're gonna go give birth with this person, they're gonna be there, you're in a relationship with them, but
Yes.
they're not supportive, or they're like, just do what the doctor says. What can a person do to
As
go
best
through that as
possible.
best as possible? Because
It's
that's a
real,
very real
and I come
scenario.
across it a lot, and it's heavy, right? And it's heavy.
It
Yeah,
does,
it's
like,
heavy.
even to
I
describe
usually
it
am
is heavy,
immediately
you
met
know?
with, but like this is the current scenario, right? So what do I do? And I try to scope out and then scope in and really explain that if we are under supported by our partner in pregnancy, which happens all the time, I want to give you a little preview of what that's going to look like when you have a newborn and what that's going to look like as you're taking care of a baby, right? So we already start to have to make decisions differently in pregnancy. So somebody may not be ready to leave their partner. They, may be working through some things, and that's okay. So we kind of have to just have a truth moment of let's just accept what currently is. But you have a lot riding on this. You have a lot riding this, and guess what? That baby's coming. Like your baby's coming, regardless if this relationship and this support is solved in the now or it's not. So with that sense of urgency, if you will, then we have to kind of
Yeah.
assess, okay, what is the relationship with the provider? Is it positive? Is it not provided? Or is there any opportunity to make any shifts there to at least get you a care provider for pregnancy that you feel in alignment with and is supporting you? Then we may need to take the route of, is there somebody else in your circle that is going to properly play that role, right? Is that a family member? Is that a friend? Is there somebody else that can kind of step in and be an added support person? Like we're not about reducing, we're about adding to when it comes, like almost like the more the merrier. Now, this this isn't always the case when you're talking about labor and delivery, right? Because there's always going to be restrictions around who can be with you. But in addition to having real, truthful, honestly uncomfortable conversations with your partner, this is not the time to just, well, that's what they want, right? Or I don't want to deal with this now. So I find that it's an onion. It's like layers to an onion to make sure that we are addressing what is real because it's not going anywhere, and then deciding how are we building your care team a little differently. To make sure that you are properly supported, but it really has to come from within here, right? Like we really have to know that, no, we do need support. And oftentimes we don't know how much support we need it until something happens. And then we realize like, man, and that was my experience, right? Like you don't really understand the full magnitude of advocating for yourself until you're in a scenario where like, wow, this is really powerful. And we just can't skimp on our support and our care team. And unfortunately, many don't have a supportive, that could be emotional support, right? That can be like somebody who just doesn't understand your pregnancy journey. And I feel like for a lot of us, pregnancy can feel isolating because we're like, God, our partner just doesn't get it. They can be awesome, they can be amazing and a great partner, but they may not be fully emotionally supporting your needs throughout pregnancy, which can affect your pregnancy mindset. So what can we be doing and who can we get on your team to make sure that you are filling those needs of support during pregnancy?
And if you're not getting it and you happen to be at birth, and maybe for some circumstance that it's only your spouse or partner or whomever
Yeah.
you're romantically linked to or not, but and it's your provider in the hospital,
Yeah,
it's the most
absolutely.
common place where people give birth is the hospital, then it's okay to lean in
Absolutely.
on those nurses
Yeah.
and just be real honest, like, if and just say,
Yeah.
I am scared." There's a lot of good labor
Absolutely.
nurses. There's a lot of I like to see there's a lot more good
Amen.
people in the world than bad, and, um, I actually had a couple good really great n labor and delivery nurses, and you can really lean into them too, and I think that that's, like most of the conversations I have are exactly like birth workers and doulas and,
Right.
empowerment pregnancy coaches like yourself. But I also think, and this is, especially because I know when I work with a lot of women, there's so many
Yeah.
varying levels of income. And also, like, there's something also I think that with a first pregnancy, depending on
Mhm.
your emotional capacity, meaning like maybe you have a lot of unhealed
Right.
trauma, maybe there's a lot of stress. Like I have worked with women who have had really difficult relationships.
Yeah.
There's no plan to leave. And that's
Right.
not up to me to decide. Again, everything is about on that client, on that person, and being
Hmm.
supportive of them throughout
Yeah.
their journey. There's no judgment here. But is ask for the support where you can get it and
Yeah.
where it's supposed to be given. Ask support for your provider, ask support from the nurses,
Yeah.
ask support from a friend. And people even sometimes
Hmm.
Facebook groups. So like depending if like maybe you don't have money for
Yeah.
these things that we're talking about. And then,
Yep.
that's also privilege is like, is like if you don't, there I want you to look for resources in your area. There's mom groups.
Hmm.
I live in the Midwest. I live in Omaha, and there is like women will show
Yeah.
up for you if you're authentic and you're kind. And I
Hmm.
love that about the Midwest. Like
I
people will
love
show
that.
up for you, and that's like another reason why
Yeah.
I'm not going back. It's so I'm not going back to Florida. You can't get me to go now.
That's amazing.
But Nebraskans are like notoriously, I
Oh,
call it Nebraska nice, and you cannot find it elsewhere. They are the nicest people, and people love
right.
to help others. And they'll bring
Yeah.
you a lot of casseroles when something happens. They'll be dropping or like, gift cards. I remember when we got COVID the first time, I had people drop off, and it was a girl I hadn't even talked to in a year. I
I
had just
love
made a
that.
Facebook post, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Please," it was a really rough time. She
It's
had
amazing.
Panera delivered to
She's
our
like, I got you,
door.
girl. I got you. Food,
And
you need it. I've got you.
yeah, and I had she listens to the podcast. Shout out to Kristen.
Yep.
But like I hadn't talked to her in forever. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, that's the nicest thing. So I just want to remind listeners.
Yeah.
So if you're on a budget
Mm-hmm.
or if you have no budget, I want you
Yes.
to become resourceful. I want you to get on Facebook because I know Facebook's not cool
Still
anymore.
has a large
But
demographic
let me tell you,
of, people
it
looking for
has a lot of
support.
Facebook
Yeah.
groups. There is in Omaha, we have a lot. What I was trying to, what I was trying to say out here in the streets was
Yeah.
there's a lot of local mom groups, and even also, there's also in person
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit mom support. We are very lucky, and I realize not every community has this. Is we have
Mm.
something called Milkworks, which is a nonprofit lactation
So important.
support group. And
Mm-hmm.
they have IBCLCs, they distribute milk pumps, you can buy them
Yeah.
there, they accept insurance, yada yada. Super amazing. I lived there when Ollie was born. But they also have in-person support groups for like moms. So like you will find
Mm-hmm.
I had to find my village because um I lost everyone
Mm.
almost in my postpartum. So in my and I when I started to search and I joined these groups, I didn't realize what
Right.
I was prepping myself up
Yes.
for a softer landing later. So there are things that you can join. There are listen to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. There are also other pregnancy birth prep podcasts. Don't feel like there's nothing
Yes.
out there to help you. There is
Mm-hmm.
free
Yep.
hypno babies on YouTube, which is birth
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis to help you get ready. There's a lot of resources, so you
Yeah.
just have to seek them out. Um, and I know that
Yeah.
just pregnancy is daunting in general, but if you want more support, knowing that what is out there is so important and getting in these groups can really change
Yeah.
like all of the things you're saying, especially if you're not going to
Right.
have the budget. But I also think there's something
Yeah.
about emotional capacity that needs to be understood. When there was certain points during my pregnancy that I
Same.
was
You're at
paralyzed, not
capacity.
physically, but like
I cannot take on anymore.
at capacity.
Yes. Yes.
I cannot, like, super scary. I was actually when I found out I was pregnant, I found out very early. I
Mm-hmm.
found out it was when I was 4 weeks
Mm-hmm.
pregnant. It was like the faintest line. But I knew the day that I conceived Ollie because,
Yes.
of course, my supernatural self.
The magic that is
The
Carolina.
electric moment is there. Oh my God. Yes, it was. Anyway, at the job that I was at, they were going through a layoff. It was I don't know. I went through 3 rounds of layoffs at that
Yeah.
factory, at that manufacturing facility. And I just remember just like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, if I could survive this, because I
Yeah.
was carrying the insurance and like I was a breadwinner and here I am pregnant. Nobody knows I'm pregnant. And like, is it
All the
wise for me to
things.
tell
Yeah.
you when I'm pregnant? Like, just like, and then just also like, okay, do I go with it? Like choosing all of these things because of course me being the natural nerd I am,
Mm-hmm.
I've been on this. I was already
It sounds
interviewing
like me.
doulas at 6 weeks
Not
pregnant.
type A.
Like
Not
I
type
hadn't
A at
even had
all.
my first
Yeah.
appointments. I was like, I'm gonna do it all.
Right.
Look at me,
Right.
superstar A plus. But I went to a
Yeah.
speed dating doula
That's
event.
yes.
And then right after the doula event, we went to my in-laws and told them that we
Yes.
were pregnant for the first time.
Right. It's
And
fine.
they're
I've
like,
got
oh
it
yeah,
under
we already have a
control.
doula. It's fine. We haven't heard the heartbeat. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Right. Mm.
Not in a hurry at
Beginning of a long
all.
journey.
So so I think that understanding your emotional capacity, what
Yep.
you feel in this moment, it's okay to
Yes.
feel, but it's going to shift.
Yep.
Things will in
Yes. There's
pregnancy, things come
seasons.
and go,
Yeah,
meaning
there's
like
seasons.
there's
We
going to
have
be
to
ups and
lean into
downs.
that. Because what
Right.
I'm also hearing in you talking about the support in Nebraska and right, like what that looked like for you is we have to get comfortable asking for support. Because guess what, Mama Love? When you get into postpartum and that baby comes,
That's,
because
oh my gosh.
let me
For the
say it
people in the
louder
back,
for the
you have
people
to
in the
get
back. Because
comfortable
you
asking
just
for
recently
help.
did a podcast, right, about the
For the
doing it all
people in the back.
mentality, right? And we do that commonly. We get into motherhood and we do it all. So if we can get into that space in pregnancy where we're like, you know what, I need support. I'm struggling with X, I'm struggling with Y, I'm struggling with Z, and find the support that we need. This really, and what I preach and as a core of empowered decisions,
Gosh, that's like the golden
it's
nugget of
finding
the
your
whole
inner power.
episode.
You have to find this strength within you. I don't care if your partner's crappy and it's not going to support you, then what are you going to do? Then what can we do, right? Like shifting that into that. Absolutely, it
I think it
does.
takes
But
vulnerability
postpartum is going to
to
force it
ask
out
for
of you.
help. And a lot
Hi,
of
break you
women,
down, girl. Yeah,
just in
we are
general,
trained
they're
not to
trained
ask.
not to ask for help.
Yeah,
Like in every capacity, be
yeah,
independent, be like a
yeah. Do
man,
it
make as
all.
much money as a man,
Yeah,
like all of these things, do it all. And I think it's
same.
taking me a long time to ask for help. And but
Mm-hmm.
then it was like when I was breaking. And I think that that's like, you need to ask for help. I actually have a podcast planned with this, with a woman who's a
Mm-hmm.
postnatal depletion specialist. She
Yes.
talks about postnatal
Yes.
depletion. I was
Yeah.
it's like a syndrome actually. Um um Ironically, I was when I was preparing for this podcast, I was also looking at that one too. So all the things, but it's to ask for help in some people's eyes is mean that
It's
you are
not.
admitting that you're weak, and
Big
it is not.
misconception, big myth,
My
big
opinion
lie.
is
You are
when you,
so strong, mama, and your baby chose you.
big
Yeah,
lie.
yeah, mentira,
Mentira.
exactly.
Mentira. Um, when you ask for help, it is one of the greatest acts of self
Absolutely.
appreciation and self love that you can do. I
Hmm.
also think you can add in self preservation.
Yeah,
We've used the word village so
yeah.
many times in this episode. And to be honest, back in the day, back in the olden
Yeah.
times, we used to live in tribes. We used to live, well, I don't like that word.
Yeah.
Cut that part. We used to live in villages, and
Hmm.
we all had assigned duties, and
Yeah.
we all herded. Fuck my words.
Yeah.
Cut that too. Back in the day, it took a village to
Hmm.
raise a whole child. And as we've grown older in society or now, our villages, I read about this when we first got married. We did a marriage co-reading book. It was interesting. Anyway, we learned
Hmm.
that the village
Yeah.
got smaller and smaller and smaller over time. So our village went from a mass of like 100 people, 200 people, and
Hmm.
each of them having different roles in our life, helping with our children, cooking, cleaning, support, emotional support.
Hmm.
There was
Yes.
elder
Yeah.
women who
Absolutely.
provided
The
wisdom and
midwives of a
insight
community, and
down to
yeah,
one person.
absolutely. The elder. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And in this
Yeah.
book, I can't remember the name of it. It's pink. It's on Ryan's bookshelf. But anyway, it talked about how all of that
Hmm.
compacted down into one person, the
Yeah.
person you're usually partnered with in a relationship. But really then if we had to look it down further, the village just really falls
Yeah.
down now on
Hmm.
the maternal person, the mother person. But so if we had to have that perspective of like, it went from
Hmm.
200 people down to
Yes.
you,
Yes.
that's not fair.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't break under that pressure and who wouldn't? You're not
And you can't. It's
supposed
not
to be
sustainable either. We've
everything.
tried. Many of us have tried
So,
and
no,
then
so that's
broken,
why
but learn
many of
from
us have
us.
tried. So
Yeah.
it's okay to, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to ask for help. It is okay because in turn, what that looks like, I know that this is going to be like I can hear it now, is that it is also a healthy sign that you're
Yes. Yes.
preserving yourself, preserving what's left, and also giving
Hmm.
yourself reprieve so you can restore. because you can't pour
All
from
the
an empty
snaps, all the
cup.
snaps to
Boy,
them.
are all the
You can't.
cliches flowing
You
tonight.
simply can't. Cliche or not, you just can't. Yeah. Yeah.
No. So I think that I
Mm-hmm.
dare you, the listener, our friend, Bessie for the resties, think of asking for help not as a sign of weakness, but a sign of self respect,
Yes.
self love, self
It's
preservation, self
self-care. It
appreciation. Like,
is.
I appreciate
Yeah.
myself, right? That this is going to, and asking for help can
Yeah.
be can be for
Yes.
things. It could be a listening ear. It could be, can we swap? I have a friend who we kid swap. One day we'll, like, occasionally, we don't do this as much as we used to, but she'll bring her kid, it plays with my son,
Yeah. Love that.
and they go on a
Yes.
date night, and then we switch. So, like, it could be asking for help of, like, or I call my mother-in-law, and there's something I
Mm-hmm.
get from my mother-in-law that I just don't get from my own mom. Like, there's this, the advice for my mother-in-law hits a bit
Yeah.
different than my mom, just because of the
Right. Right.
complicated relationship I have with my mom. There's a lot more trust in the wisdom that my mother-in-law
Mm-hmm.
has given me, especially about parenting, because she parented so well. I got a fantastic 5-star husband. There's something, so if I had this past week was really challenging with our son, and I called
Mm-hmm.
her immediately. I said, I
Yep.
need prayer. I
Got
need you to pray for
chills. I just
me,
got chills as you
and
saying that.
I need to know what to do, because
Yeah.
and I need to know what
Mm-hmm.
to do, because I don't know what to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
never feel shame
Mm-hmm.
anymore asking her for those things, because you know what? I
Mm-hmm.
know that she loves me so hardcore. She wants me, she wants my son, and
Mm-hmm.
she wants my husband to be well. And I think that's important
Mm-hmm.
to understand, is that when you are asking for help,
Yes. I
look
was
at
just
who you're
gonna
asking for help from.
mention that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I'm talking on a personal level, and
Yes.
look at the relationship. What state is it in? I don't,
Sure.
mother-in-law relationships are tricky, but my mother-in-law shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Even if things were, like, I thought were not
Yeah.
perfect,
Yeah.
she's seen my
Yeah.
pubes. She's seen, like,
Yeah.
she's every surgery I've ever had in Nebraska, and I've had
She's
quite a
there.
few. She's been there.
Mm-hmm.
And people show up, and that matters in my book,
Mm-hmm.
because I have had plenty of
Right.
the people who are
Mm-hmm.
genetically blood related not give a fuck
Mm-hmm.
about me or when the things I'm going through. So
Mm-hmm.
look at who is showing up for you. And I bet you, if you ask them,
Yeah.
if they're showing up for you, meaning they're texting, how are you? How's your pregnancy? Do you need
Mm-hmm.
anything? Those are the people that you need to
Amen.
appreciate and invest more time in. Because if, instead of asking, um,
Right.
can I
Right.
have $20? Those are not the
They care
people. But
about
the
your
people
health
that
and
are asking,
well-being.
who
Like
just, how are you
genuinely
doing?
care.
Or
I
those
mention this
people
a
are
lot in
winners.
my content of
Yes.
protecting our energy and censoring what we're consuming during pregnancy. And sometimes when we look at our inner circle and our village, some people feel like, well, my village is toxic, right? Like this, I am surrounded by negative energy. So I think
Mm.
too that there is such freedom on the other side and peace on the other side of being vulnerable enough to ask for help. But we also have to, pregnancy is going to show you who's toxic and not toxic in your village. Motherhood is going to show you who's toxic and not toxic, right? But it's like
Oh,
it
I
kind
didn't
of
know that's what
gets
was
revealed
happening
to
in my
you, but it's all for the
pregnancy.
better, right? It's a gift so that you're heading in the direction of having the
It's
proper
so
support for
painful.
people who you can ask for help. And that's, it's almost, it takes a journey. All of us
Yeah.
are there, right? It takes a journey to get to the point where you're like, these are my people, like they've got me.
Woof.
But we do have to
Oofta.
start that in pregnancy. I always think about this journey from pregnancy to motherhood. And we have to start with asking the questions. We have to start with the, stepping into that inner power. We have to start with the vulnerability. And a lot of us can spend time in our masculine energy and kind of finding that balance into the feminine. But we got to have this support system and a circle that we trust and that we know is got us, is going to show up just like your mother-in-law does. God bless mother-in-law.
Yeah. God bless her.
God bless
I
her. You're like, I'll keep her.
she's pretty good. God bless her. She also
What?
tolerates
I
me.
don't know what
Like,
you're
I'm a
talking about.
lot. Like, I am a lot. Oh no. I need you to have seen the paragraph I sent her the other day. We're going there for Memorial Day and was like, I have these 7 things you
Bullet
should
pointed.
consider that I want to do. I have been
And click up.
I've been researching these. Not a click up. I said, these are the things I would like you to consider. And in parentheses, I was
God
like,
bless
but
you.
I really want to do them. And they were like, and this is in Wichita, Kansas. And I was just like, there's an Asian nighttime market. I'm super excited. I was like, I've never been here. I need to go
If you ever
get some
come out to
boba tea.
California, I'm going to need a
I
7
want some
bullet
pho.
pointed list prior to your trip of recommendations from Carolina. What can I know?
Well, we
I
never
know you
leave the
got to do stuff.
house.
You
We
got to
need
do
to
stuff.
go do stuff.
Yeah.
Wichita's boring. I found a hidden secret underground bowling alley at
I
the
love
one of the
that.
universities. I follow the university page. I'm finding like super cool things for us to do. I found this new retro arcade that has like is it it's not pinwheels. It's the that's slanted. It looks like
Nope.
this and then you have to push and then the things go like
I don't think
this.
so.
You don't know what those are? Pin
Okay. Oh,
Anyway,
games.
they're
Yeah. We have
retro
to hit it through, but if the
games.
things go down, yeah,
Yeah.
you have to time it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I want to show Ollie what those are about
Totally.
because he's 6. He's never seen anything like that. Um that I'm gonna watch the name will come later. It's like it's not ping pong, it's not pinball, it's something machine. Anyway, there's like loads of them in there and it's all retro. It's like all old. And I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
There's a new bookstore and it's I don't know. It's going to be great. So anyway, this tangent. So anyway, just to recap is if you're are you supported enough in pregnancy?
Right.
You may or may not be. And if you're not, the first thing is you need
Absolutely.
to know that you're
You are
worthy
so worthy.
of
Please
being
say that
supported.
again. Mama,
So that
listener,
starts with
you
your
are
mindset.
worthy of proper support, healthy, loving support in your pregnancy. And for me, it comes down to your pregnancy mindset, building a care team, learning how to self-advocate. It's a core in order to be able to get through this beautiful yet crazy journey that we're on when we're pregnant.
So we're going to do mindset. You're going to learn what you want so you can effectively communicate that to your provider. Make sure your provider matches what those wishes are. And you're going to start asking the right questions. That could be, is this good enough? Do I like this? How do I want to labor? All of those fun questions, which could take hours and hours even just to dive into. But the next thing is, I want you to ask the question of, can you help me please with X? And I want you to look at the relationship of the person that you're having this conversation with.
Right.
And that might be the nurse at the doctor's office. Hey, the doctor's, hey, Amber, receptionist person, I have these other questions. I forgot to ask them the doctor. Is there someone else that I can ask these questions to? There's usually someone in their
don't take no for
office
an
that will
answer.
sit and talk to you.
Really push for that. That's a part of advocacy is just continuing to like fight for what you need and what you want. And somebody will help you, but sometimes it takes a little effort and that's okay.
And if you're not getting the responses that you want, I highly recommend, in a very controversial way, go join a mom group in your local area. And now Facebook has anonymous posting in those groups. You can have your privacy, go to the local mom group and say, hey, I am looking for a new medical provider that does XYZ. I want this kind of pregnancy experience and I want this kind of birth experience.
Yes.
Please give your recommendations of who you've had great experiences with. There's no better way to find a good provider than reviews from moms in those mom groups. Absolutely, because they're moms that have lived it. birthed multiple children maybe, or have had
People are going to
different
be
bad
honest, and then
experiences, and
interview
people will
them.
tell you,
And then interview
especially
them.
in
You
the
have a
mom groups.
great starting point, right?
Yeah.
It's such a great starting point as a
Then
referral.
interview, see if you
A
match
common
up.
question is like, I don't even know where to start, right? When it comes to like,
Yeah.
what do I want and don't want? And when I was putting together the birth plan template and guide, I'm like, it's important to note that when we talk about planning for birth, using that to get these thoughts out of your head, to get these questions out of your head, and to use that as a conversation tool throughout your pregnancy, to take it to this provider, to interview, to kind of, pull together all of your thoughts and questions. So don't be afraid to write things down, to, really start looking at that, what am I experiencing? What do I want? So that you can properly have those conversations that you need to have throughout pregnancy and as you prep for birth. Okay.
We'll link that in the show notes for sure. So friends, I want you to be the first to know you can download my sleepy meditation to connect to your spirit baby in the show notes. This is the favorite Reiki meditation that's inside my Make a Baby membership, which has been popping. So I want you to know that you can connect to your baby while you're asleep. And so we don't waste time or energy around here connecting to the other side, because the spirit baby has your answers. And I know when we're doing fertility, that's the number one thing we want answers, right? Also, Anne has been super, super generous. She has an epic birth affirmation guide where it'll shift you away from fear-based mindset. And these affirmations are a mind, body, baby approach. How cool is that? That's like next level birth affirmations. So while you have your phone open, assuming you're listening to my voice right now, I want you to go ahead and open up the Instagram app. Follow me at the Carolina Sotomayor.
It is at
Follow Anne. Anne, what is your handle?
With an E. Yes.
I'd love to hear from you. Anne would love to hear from you.
Yes.
We'll definitely send you a DM back. We want to know what you thought about that. Sometimes we even do voice messages. So make sure you hit us up. If there's a topic you want me to speak about on the podcast, please let me know. Coming up next week on the show, we're talking about when is it okay to ask for help in postpartum. So a lot of the things that we talk about now, but what we're going to show you is stop wasting your time listening to Granny's outdated 50-year-old advice, and where to focus your energy and attention so you can have the best postpartum possible and avoid depletion. So go ahead, share this show with your friends. If they're trying to conceive, let them know what's coming up next week and invite them to tune in with you and learn how to conceive with Reiki too. Until then, let the Reiki flow, and I'll see you back here next time. Feeling hopeless in your fertility journey, fearful that you'll never become pregnant? The Make a Baby membership was created just for you, using the exact methods of Reiki that helped me conceive my son. We've helped over 75 babies come into this world by removing blockages from the womb and body with our powerful Reiki techniques. Visit carolinasotomayor.com to join the Make a Baby membership today.